I call to order the meeting of the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District Board of Managers, October 21, 2021. This meeting is being convened electronically pursuant to Minnesota statutes, open meeting law section 13D.021 subdivision 1, due to the fact that there is a pandemic and that I have determined that it's not prudent or feasible for us to meet in our usual place of business. All votes will be taken by roll call in keeping with that statute, and all appropriate or applicable terms of the open meeting law are being complied with. I will begin first by taking the roll call for attendance. Manager Hejmati.
Present.
Manager Loftus is not with us. Manager Maxwell.
Here.
Manager Miller.
Here.
Manager Olson. Manager Sando.
Here.
Manager Olson. We have a quorum. Is there any member of the public here who wishes to speak to the board in a matter not on the agenda?
Doesn't look like it, President White. I'm accounting for everybody, and I know unfamiliar names are here for the permit.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Move approval. Maxwell second.
Thank you. Miller moves, Maxwell seconds. Then going to a roll call vote on approving the agenda. Manager Sando.
Move.
Manager Olson. Manager Miller.
Aye.
Manager Maxwell.
Aye.
Manager Loftus, not here. Manager Hejmati.
Aye.
And Manager White votes aye. The agenda is approved. Thank you. We have an information item in our packet, as noted in the agenda. Moving to the consent agenda, we have the approval of the October 7th board meeting minutes, approval of the check registers for the general checking account, surety checking account, and wire transfers, and 3 resolutions. 21066 is authorization to issue an RFP for engineering services. 21067, authorization to issue RFP for governmental relations service. 21068, ratifying assent to land registration for 4500 France Avenue in Edina. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Miller moves and Sando seconds?
Yes.
Okay. Then voting on approval of the consent agenda. Manager Hejmati.
Aye.
Manager Olson.
Aye.
Manager Miller.
Aye.
Manager Maxwell.
Aye.
Manager Loftus, not here. Manager Sando.
Aye.
Manager White votes aye. Consent agenda is approved. I haven't had meetings that I need to report on in the last 2 weeks, so I want to turn to Manager Miller for report on the Policy and Planning Committee meeting.
We had a robust discussion led by the staff's excellent presentation on the design elements of 325 Lake Road and the accompanying water treatment facilities and the public improvements for that site. And the staff will be coming back several weeks with a proposal for engaging consultants for developing the design and construction oversight.
Thank you, Manager Miller. Manager Hejmati, can you report on Metro Mod, please?
Yes. The Metro Mod meeting took place last Tuesday, the 19th, and there were 3 of us present, Manager White, Manager Olson, and myself. The most important topic, I think, that was talked about at that was the Metro Watershed-based implementation funding, and Emily Jevons was supposed to present it, but there was a glitch in the video, and the video was then sent out yesterday. And if anyone wants to see the video, let me know, and I will forward that to them because there's a lot of detail, and I won't have time to cover it. Essentially, Maud made a number of suggestions, and some of its ideas were approved, but not all the requests were considered. My quick take on it was that the funding that was approved for 22-23 financial year was around $400,000 for us for NCWD. I forwarded the board packet to James. They put a board packet on because Emily was not there. And so I forwarded to James, and I'm sure that James has all the intricacies of it, and he'll be following it. So the number I gave, I'm not sure how accurate that is. I'm going to let James comment on it, when it's his turn to talk. But that was probably the most important one. It's going to be considered by the board on 10/27. And I'm not sure what that means, whether they're going to pass it or not. But that's probably a critical piece that happened. The second thing is that our annual conference is going to be done virtually, and the usual format of Wednesday through Friday and the annual meeting on Saturday, starting November 30th and going through December 4th. The other interesting points, there were a number of things that happened, but I'll just pick on the highlights. One was that the MPCA has monthly webinars on Thursday morning on MS4, on the intricacies of MS4, and that's useful to have. The second thing that was interesting was that the Minnesota Stormwater Research Council, John Bellotta, presented, and there were two projects that he reported on that seemed really interesting to us. The first one was assessing the content of stormwater contaminants. Since we are monitoring, what's in the in Minnehaha Creek, this kind of data could be useful for us. It's real life data where someone has actually gone out and measured what the effluent, what is in the effluent of stormwater, and my understanding was that it has not been done in such a detailed way prior to this. So that might be useful for us. The second one was that there was a presentation, there's a research project on downscaling climate data modeling so that small cities or small communities can take that data and apply it to themselves. And I thought that was rather interesting because that's sort of what we are doing in our 2D modeling, applying it to small communities so that they can figure out where they are at risk. And so this might be a way in which there might be some overlap there, or some way we can compare our work to theirs. The other thing that MSRC John Bellotta said was that they have monthly seminars in which they talk about what they do, and so that is another interesting piece of information. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Andrew Hishmati. Anyone have questions for him? I would add that
either you, would you please, you and Joe, and you and Bill, please add things.
I just wanted to say that Bowser meeting where they'll consider that draft, what is now a draft proposal for watershed-based implementation funding, is going to be virtual, and the packet is online, and people can attend the meeting if they're interested, virtually attend the meeting. Thank you very much, Andrew Hishmati. We note that the upcoming meeting and event schedule is in the agenda. Manager Miller will be going to Citizens Advisory Committee November 10th. We having committee and board meetings the first and third Thursdays of the month. And we can now move to the permit. Mr. Thompson has a permit 21445.
Thank you, President White. I will share my screen here and then switch over to the presentation. One moment. Or is that something where you can delegate that authority? Let's see here.
What do you need, Cole?
Here we go. Oh, just the screen sharing.
You should be set.
Yep. All right. Let's.
There you go.
Are you guys seeing the presentation or with the notes?
You can see
We're seeing your
presentation.
notes.
We're seeing both.
All right, let me see here. Let me switch to this one. Is that better?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Looks great. Looks great. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, President White, Board of Managers. Tonight I'm here to present permit number 21-515 regarding a sanitary sewer replacement in the city of Minneapolis proposed by the city of Minneapolis. Now, for the agenda tonight, you can expect that we'll discuss the existing conditions, the proposed conditions, and the reason for the project before you, as well as an analysis of district rule triggers, and subsequently which aspects of the rule are and are not being met, and the portions of the rule not being met are subject to a variance request. And then ultimately provide the analysis that both engineering and staff had conducted on this project, and ultimately provide a recommendation for the board. Now, to orient you with this project, it is on the northeast portion of the district in Minneapolis, located between Cedar Lake and Lake of the Isles. Now, here is a map showcasing just a couple other district interests in the area, just to get you a bit better oriented with this project location. Now, again, this project is located between Cedar Lake and Lake of the Isles within the channel that separates the two, known as the Kenilworth Channel. The subject of this discussion, as I noted, is a sanitary sewer replacement that the city is proposing, where there is an existing 8-inch cast iron pipe below the Kenilworth Channel that gravity feeds sanitary discharge from neighborhoods to the north of the channel, south of the channel, to a lift station. This lift station takes the sanitary sewer discharge, raises it up so that it can continue to gravity feed toward additional Met Council facilities. So on the left of your screen, you'll see an area outlined in yellow. And within that area, you'll see these purple lines. Those are the sanitary sewer lines that ultimately run to this existing 8-inch pipe that is located below the bed of the Kenilworth Channel. So all of those homes are serviced by this network of lines. It runs south below the channel to this lift station and continues to move south. Now, this pipe network was originally constructed within the city in the 1940s. So it's a bit of an aged system and has been found to be in disrepair in specific areas, including this area below the channel. As I had noted, it's a cast iron pipe, and the city has done research on this pipe and used a CCTV camera to review inside the pipe, and noted it has some sags and some deficiencies, and therefore are looking to replace this pipe. For this project and this project area, this actually coincides with an already active and permitted site within the district. The Minneapolis Park Board had received approval on a staff level for a permit to conduct a stabilization and naturalization project of this Kenilworth Channel. So this pipe is actually within the active work area for this park board project. So the park board and their surface waters and sewage department decided this may be an opportune time to replace this pipe, since that area again is already being worked, and it would likely be convenient for all parties. So again, the city is looking to replace this pipe with updated modern materials to reduce the potential of failure and also reduce the scope of disturbance associated with the bed and banks of this water body system. And with regards to district rule authority for this project, the district's only rule triggered is the water body crossings and structures rule. And this rule is triggered whenever an applicant is proposing to conduct work associated with the bed or bank of a water body. So again, as the pipe below the bed of the Kenilworth Channel is proposed to be replaced, the rule is triggered. You'll see here on your screen, this is a close-up engineered site plan showcasing the actual approximate location of this cast iron pipe. It's about 55 feet in length from the north bank to the south. Again, that travels about 6 inches below the bed of the Kenilworth Channel. Now, in reviewing this proposal, staff and district engineer reviewed the criteria to approve the rule on a staff level for the water body crossings and structures rule, and found that it meets a variety of the rule criteria. This includes providing a public benefit to homeowners who utilize this sanitary sewer system and would have disrupted service if this pipe ever, for instance, failed, as well as, providing, coverage against any sort of leaks by updating to more modern technologies. Additionally, the project was shown to retain adequate hydrology in terms of no impacts upstream or downstream of their proposal. Additionally, the rule criteria requires they provide justification that navigational capacity will be maintained, preservation of aquatic passage for critters as needed, won't negatively affect water quality, represents the minimal impact to the area, and also provides redundancy with respect to the methodology of construction as well as the materials used to ensure that this pipe is up to code and has the best materials used for this sort of work. And so, as I had noted, the project does meet nearly all of the criteria of the rule. However, the applicant is requesting a variance from section 3G of the rule. 3G of the rule requires that applicants provide 3 feet of separation from the bottom of the water body to the top of the utility, so that there would be 3 feet of separation of organic material and other material to protect this embedded utility against damage or things of that nature. So with regards to the variance criteria on your screen, the applicant has indicated that with respect to this pipe being constructed in the 40s, prior to district inception, constitutes a special condition inherent to the property, that they had also not willingly, created a hardship, as well as, granting this convenience to the applicant would not serve as just a convenience. Additional criteria within the variance request requirements is that they provide alternatives to indicate that this is the best solution. So the applicant has provided a proposal, which I will showcase the materials and whatnot here in one moment. But the first alternative was the no build scenario, and that would just be the do nothing proposal. And the city had indicated that this would not meet their maintenance and operation requirements for regular usage of this. Sorry, my cat. Of this pipe. And so therefore this wouldn't meet the objective of the project. Additionally, the other proposal would be reconstruction of a wider network of sanitary sewer, both north of the channel and south of the channel, to accommodate the pipe being lowered to meet the 3 foot separation requirement. And the city had noted this may not be a reasonable expenditure of public funds and efforts due to the existing infrastructure and the fact that the lift station receiving this sewage, the sanitary sewage, was reconstructed as recently as 2012. So here on your screen, you'll see a cross section of the proposed replacement pipe. Now, as I had noted, the existing pipe is made of 8-inch cast iron and was standard practice for the time when it was installed decades ago. The applicant is proposing to utilize more modern technologies, which includes the 8-inch original diameter pipe made of PVC. It would be encapsulated in an insulation foam, sleeved in another plastic jacket, and then encased in a concrete block the length of the pipe from bank to bank, north to south. So with regards to the footprint of this proposal, it has a wider and taller footprint than the original pipe. So with regard to you know, the length, width, height of it, to get the exact gravity feed that they need so that the system is maintained, it would require the pipe be placed in the same location, but again, the footprint would be taller. Therefore, the original pipe, as I noted, has 6 inches of cover, but this new proposal would have that top of the concrete box be flat with the water body bottom, the Kenilworth channel bottom. Now, again, this does not meet the 3-foot minimum clearance from, you know, burying the pipe lower to ensure that it's adequately, you know, encased from the elements and that sort of thing. So with regard to this new updated material, they have provided adequate assurance that these redundancies are in place to provide protection to the pipe. And additionally, the applicant in, you know, in the spirit of meeting that 3-foot requirement, they're proposing to add 6 inches of an aggregate material over the concrete to, again, provide potentially a bit more insulation because this area is prone to thin ice. So the applicant believes that, you know, this new modern technology, as well as seeking to provide a bit more additional coverage, would satisfy the safety hopes of this project as well as the functionality. Now, with that 6 inches of fill over the top of the pipe to further insulate it, it would change the channel depth in this area where the pipe is located from 2.5 feet deep to 2 feet. And again, it's all in nature of trying to meet the rule to the best of the applicant's ability and also to provide further insulation against any outside forces. With regard to navigational capacity, hydraulic capacity, upstream, downstream impacts, the district's engineer has reviewed that and determined there would be no impacts to any of those you know, regular activities that the water body and recreationalists you know, do day to day. And we had also vetted with the applicant and the Army Corps of Engineers and the DNR that no additional permits would be required from them as well. And that brings us to the recommendation provided by staff in conjunction with the district engineer, is that staff and the engineer had found that you know, this is meeting the rule to the best of the applicant's ability. And as stated within the permit report, there are no conditions of approval associated with this permit. So the engineer and staff are recommending outright approval of the project as permit number 21-515.
Thank you,
And
Mr.
with that,
Thompson.
I can take any questions that you may have.
Excellent, thank you. First of all, is there a motion to approve the variance based upon the analysis provided by staff?
Maxwell moves.
Thank you, Manager Maxwell. Is there a second?
Hejmadi, second.
Thank you, Manager Hejmadi. Do we have, anyone have questions for Mr. Thompson?
Manager Olson does.
Go ahead, Manager Olson.
As I looked at that drawing where the aggregate is around the pipe box, if the creek is empty, is the top of that aggregate exposed?
Manager Olson, that's a great question. With regards to the water levels of both Cedar Lake and Lake of the Isles, my understanding is that there would still be water within the channel, as to show aggregate, it would constitute a 2-foot drop in the water level of each lake. And
Okay.
With regards to, especially to this year with being drought conditions, there is still multiple feet of standing water within the channel between these two lakes, you know, and have been throughout this growing season into now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not like the creek where the creek occasionally dries out. This is more driven by the lake level.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Is this a winter project or a next spring project?
This is actually, excuse me, Manager Maxwell, thank you for your question. This is actually proposed to be completed prior to Thanksgiving, is my understanding, is the target date. So end of November. As I had noted, the park board already has crews mobilized in this area and is currently working the project associated with stabilizing and naturalizing this previously degraded channel corridor. Therefore, it would be a bit of an easier attempt to go in and quickly change this pipe, as again, the area where this pipe is located is already dewatered.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? All right, then voting on the variance, approval of variance. Manager Miller,
Aye.
Manager Olson.
Aye.
Manager Sando,
Aye.
Manager Hejmadi,
Aye.
Manager Maxwell,
Aye.
and White votes aye. So now, is there a motion to approve the permit with that variance in place?
Move approval.
Thank you, Manager Miller. Is there a second?
Hejmadi, second.
Manager Hejmadi. Any questions regarding the overall permit? Very well, then voting on the permit, Manager Maxwell,
Aye.
Manager Hejmadi,
Aye.
Manager Sando,
Aye.
Manager Olson.
Aye.
Manager Miller,
Aye.
and Manager White votes aye. Thank you, Mr. Thompson.
Yep. Thank you all managers and President White.
Our next item here is a public hearing. Ms. Moran is going to present on the Maple Creek Pond Improvement Project. So I open the public hearing.
Thank you. All right, can everyone hear me and see the screen all right?
Yes, yes.
But we can't see your notes.
They're actually on a separate computer, so. So I actually will be covering 2 items in your board packet this evening. The first item is the public hearing under 10.1 in your packet. Following the public hearing, I will flow then into item 11.1, the ordering of the Maple Creek Pond Improvement Project, pending comments from the public. And for the outline this evening, I'll speak to purpose and background, provide the project request, history from the City of Plymouth. I'll walk through the project summary, and at that point, then I'll turn this over to President White for the public hearing. From there, upon a close of the public hearing, I will then move to walking through some of the elements for consideration with the project ordering, including budget, the draft term sheet, timeline, and then we'll wrap up with the recommended action for the board with resolution 21-069. And so the purpose for tonight is twofold. The first is the public hearing to obtain input from the public regarding the Maple Creek Pond Improvement Project. Following that, then it will be providing that update on those kind of key elements, including the budget, the term sheet, timeline, which will then allow the board of managers to determine if they want to proceed with project ordering. And just to ground us in location, the red box on your screen within the city of Plymouth is really outlining the creek, Maple Creek, which is running north-south in that red outline. And if you follow Maple Creek down, it ultimately flows into Gleason Lake, located on the lower end of the map here. And Gleason Lake is impaired for nutrients. And for background, the district recognizes that the protection and improvement of water resources is best achieved through close coordination with its cities, along with others acting on the landscape. And of course, this was incorporated into the district's watershed management plan in 2017, which includes the opportunity-based stormwater improvement projects in our CIP. And so this includes one for the Gleason Lake subwatershed, which has been flagged for the purpose of reducing stormwater volume and also nutrient loads to impaired waters, including Gleason Lake. And under this watershed management plan, the district also flagged the need to partner with those who change the landscape. And so this led the district staff to develop the responsive program, which is currently in the pilot phase. And under this pilot phase is when the city of Plymouth coordinated with the district to really look at identifying opportunities that are within the city CIP, but then match up with our CIP for the subwater Gleason Lake area. And we're really looking to integrate water quality improvements, in particular benefits to impaired Gleason Lake. And so based off of that coordination, the city submitted a request for funding support for the Maple Creek Drainage Improvement Project. And so with this request that was submitted on June 30th, the Maple Creek Drainage Improvement Project has two components. And so on your screen here, you can see on the upper northern section is the Maple Creek Pond Improvement Project. And then on the southern portion outlined also in that blue shading is the Steeplechase wetland area. And so in total with those two components under this drainage improvement project, the city of Plymouth requested funding support from the district for a little over $405,000 out of a total $450K project. And that was to exclude payments regarding dredging for the Maple Creek Pond located in that northern portion. And so overall, this total project has an estimated around 25 pounds of TP removal. And so this has been worked through committee and the board. And as we've been working with the city and the district engineer, as we kind of refined the benefit numbers from the modeling. But on September 23rd, the project review and then the staff recommendation to focus just on the northern portion was approved with resolution 21-064 and also then directed the staff regarding duly noting for the public hearing. And before we switch over to the public hearing, I did just want to talk to this northern portion that is the focus for the public hearing this evening. And so with that northern portion, that is where the district is recommending the funding support, which we're calling the Maple Creek Pond Improvement Project. In terms of scope, the primary piece is an iron enhanced filtration bench located in that pond. The estimated benefits, we've refined that with the city engineer and the district engineer, and we're looking at around 19 to 20 pounds of TP removal based on modeling. The total project cost is at $241,000. Again, around $200K if you exclude the dredging cost that was not part of the funding request from the city. And taking into a couple things into consideration, first, we scaled back and are basically recommending do not exceed of 100K. So basically providing 50% of that 200K of really focusing in on the water quality components. And really we scaled this back based on a couple items, the timeline. And so the city is still on track for bidding this November, construction starting in January and wrapping up in March of 2022. Initially from the initial request, we had a higher TP removal, and based off of further review and vetting and refinement, we're basically half, coming down from 40 to about 20 pounds. And in addition, there isn't any monitoring data of kind of pre-project. So again, all of the benefit is estimated based off of that modeling. And so that's why we kind of came down to this 50% with that not to exceed 100K. And so with this, I will turn it over to President White. I think a couple items to note. The city of Plymouth is hosting their open house for this overall project, for the drainage improvement project, on Monday via Zoom. And then with that piece, I will hand it over to President White for public input.
Thank you, Ms. Moran. Did we receive written comments from the public on this project?
We did not. We received one voicemail, which I spoke with the resident. They actually live in the Steeplechase, the southern portion, and they've also coordinated with the city. And we've also spoke with the city about this resident, and they'll be attending that city-sponsored meeting on Monday, November 25th.
Thank you. Mr. Whisker, are there members of the public here for this project, for this public hearing this evening?
President White, no members of the public in the meeting this evening.
All right, thank you. Then I will close the public hearing, and we can move to item 11.1, which is resolution 21-069.
Can I ask a question first before?
By all means, go right ahead.
Several years ago, we did a bank improvement project through a townhouse project that of water either leading out of Gleason Lake or leading into Gleason Lake. Is this part of the same water system, stream system?
Thank you, Manager Miller. I'm trying to find a map here for you. I believe, let's see. I believe that was it, the Chelsea Woods project?
Yeah, that was it. That was it.
That is a little bit further south, if I remember correctly, than this project location.
Okay, but it's the same creek?
It was a side channel, if I remember correctly, for that 2012 Chelsea. It was a side drainage. I don't remember off the top of my head if it flowed directly into Maple Creek, but I can look into that and get
That's
back.
right. Manager Miller, this is James. I can't control. Oh, could you go back to the map?
Yep.
So you can see just north of Gleason Lake, which is at the bottom of the screen, there's a road. That's County Road 6. And just to the north and east of where the channel is and County Road 6 is, you can see 18th Avenue North labeled on the map. That's the neighborhood for Chelsea Woods. And there's a stream channel that runs through there under 18th Avenue North and connects in with the main stem that then drains into Gleason Lake. That's where the Chelsea Woods channel stabilization work was.
And this is in this creek is part of that same system?
It is part of the same system. You can see, again, I can't control the and maybe I can if you can hand it over, but the channel you can see from the north, if you follow it all the way down, Kate, Manager Miller can see the main stem out of that red box. It comes out of the bottom left corner of that red box and goes west under Dunkirk. And then it flows parallel with Dunkirk all the way down to 19th Avenue. It comes back under Dunkirk, continues south, goes under 6 into Gleason Lake. Before County Road 6, the Chelsea Woods channel merges into the main stem of at Gleason Creek.
Okay, thank you.
And if I can just add one more note to that, this is Becky. So as part of the Steeplechase project, the southern portion of the city's project, there is a diversion of some of the water from the main channel, and that does eventually go towards Chelsea Woods, and they are making some adjustments to kind of the weirs and kind of how the flow is split there. So that's part of what we'll be looking at through the permit that was just submitted to ensure that there are no downstream impacts to obviously the district's project or any other, changes in the kind of flow, the way the flow is split there that we'd be concerned with.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Christopher. There'll be an opportunity to get more questions into when we move to the resolution itself. Did you want to add anything more before I look for a motion on the resolution, Ms. Moran?
I do have a couple more slides.
Certainly.
So for the project ordering piece, I did want to speak to budget, the draft term sheet that was in your packet under attachment 3. So under that action item 11.1. If you want to pull that up, feel free to follow along as well. And then I'll wrap up with next steps. And so for the budget, this is going to be through the pilot phase with that responsive program. So it'll be coming from the responsive CIP. We have, finished our 2022 budget. We do have $250,000 set aside, but that would require a budget amendment. So again, that is something we will come back to the board with in November. Again, I want to be clear for today's resolution. There is no funding requested today. The funding is contingent on the approval of a funding agreement between the district and the city. And that draft term sheet that we're going to get to next year ultimately will kind of feed into the development of that funding agreement. And so in your attachment 3, you had a draft term sheet. And this is something we developed with district staff from project and planning, R&M, and land management, as well as legal counsel and the district engineer. And so this, another item I do want to flag, as this is the first project coming through the pilot phase of the responsive program, we also are starting to consider terms that we want for the program more broadly. And really for tonight, I wanted to provide this draft term sheet really to frame out the district's roles and responsibilities as part of the basis for the board's decision for project ordering this evening, with understanding that this is still a draft form and is under discussion with the city. And what we're trying to do is we're really trying to find that right balance to ensure that the terms protect the district on one hand, but on the other side, we're not disproportionate in their burden to funds the district is providing. So we don't want to make it a disincentive to partner with us, with our cities. And so we are considering, maybe we want more robust requirements for larger projects or larger dollar amount projects that we are providing funding support for. And maybe we're willing to accept for smaller projects, just less requirements, so the burden is not disproportionate. To date, we have been having discussions with city staff regarding this draft term sheet. And so on your screen here, I bolded out 3 items, and these are kind of the 3 areas that we're having discussions with the city and further refinement. In terms of the areas that the city has flagged, the primary one is performance standard and monitoring terms. And so the city does not have any existing baseline data for monitoring and reporting for this area. And in terms of for performance standards, the city relies on modeling and surveying typically for their BMP projects to really validate removal rates. And so their feedback to date is, this site is not currently monitored and there's no pre-project data. In addition, they are relying on modeling to estimate the project benefits. And in terms of the purpose of relying on inspection of the filter media for that filter bench, it's basically to determine, when replacement is needed, which is consistent actually with the programmatic agreements that we have with many cities, and including when we're working with the city of Plymouth on. And we also, when we did our scan of other kind of relevant programs, when we were working through with the pilot phase of responsive program, we did find that, performance monitoring and reimbursement were not required for most of these grant programs that we reviewed. And so with this, we do welcome any board input on this, recognizing this is a draft term sheet. We're still working through with the city, but it is an opportunity for the board to signal to the city, what it expects and what it's willing to accept for this particular project. Otherwise, we will, move forward with, further discussions with our staff, legal and engineering, as well as the city to really evaluate our options. And we're really just trying to find that kind of reasonable middle ground or right balance. And ultimately, we would come back to the board with the recommendation in November. And so with that, I think the final piece is a little bit more minor, is signage. And so the city is not planning on any signage for this project. While it is in a public park for the city with a trail, it is a filter bench, so it's under the pond. It's not highly visible. And so the city does not have any plans to put a sign in, but they feel like if the board feels very strongly about that and the board is willing to put funds towards that, signage is something they can work through with their parks department. So I just kind of wanted, while it's fairly minor compared to performance and standards, that was one question I also wanted to hear back from the board if they felt strongly regarding signage. And so that's kind of the big overview with the draft term sheet. Again, we're continuing our conversation with the city, but we did just want to kind of check in to make sure the board had a sense of kind of the scope that we were working through with the city and our partners. So I guess any questions with that piece?
Thank you, Ms. Moran. Does anyone want to ask questions right now about the term sheet or offer comments?
I just have one, Gene,
Yes.
one quick question. Is the signage a safety signage or is it a partnership signage?
Partnership or informational. And from my understanding, I think for district projects that are typically on public property, there sometimes is signage involved. And so I think for this one, while the BMP is below the water level, it's maybe not the most appropriate place for signage in terms of educational value.
No, I was just more concerned about safety. If they were talking about a safety, if we wanted to have safety signs up there or something like that, or warning signs or something like that. I wasn't looking for partnership signs. I was more concerned about the safety of it.
Thank you, Manager Maxwell.
Can
Yes,
I?
Manager. Go ahead, Manager Miller.
Having in a prior life written a lot of applications for grants and stuff, you got to make sure that we're not, we got a process, there's a purpose for our process. And, we're not just loading up all kinds of requirements that don't fit every application, but it just causes people a lot of concern and extra work. So I just want us to make sure that we're not putting undue burdens on these applications, in that they're well thought out. They don't have to be a uniform pattern for every grant that we make. I think that we'd be making a mistake if we're trying to standardize everything, because we wouldn't be able to recognize uniqueness if it's presented. So it's just a comment. I don't have it. I don't think it's specifically directed towards this grant, but I just want to make sure that we're not tying ourselves up or making our applications to us less desirable because of administrative detail.
Thank you, Manager Miller. That is well received on my end.
Yep. President White, may I?
Yes. Yes.
Just to build off of what Manager Miller said, Becky, Kate, and I have been discussing that that exact sentiment with regards to how we move capital projects forward within the responsive program. Every capital project the district develops is on its own through its focal approach is unique. And as a result, we custom tailor and negotiate the project scope, our partnership, the cooperative agreement, all of those terms. There is a desire within the responsive program to make things more efficient, repeatable, systematic, but we also recognize that projects coming through, there's going to be elements that need to be negotiated with regards to things like performance monitoring, reporting standards. I think staff's envisioning developing a set of criteria that allow us to move up and down a sliding scale, so that if it's a routine sort of pipe and pond project that are tried and true, we know how they work and the modeling's well established. Maybe the degree of performance monitoring that we want is none from the partner, or if we want it because we really want the data to understand how our particular subwatershed's working, maybe we're paying for it. And then on more innovative projects, maybe the desire for performance monitoring as a risk management measure scales up and we share those costs with the partner. So I think, as Kate mentioned, that the comment's well-founded, and with this being a test cookie through the pilot model, we're thinking about what do we negotiate with Plymouth, but also how do those set precedents for how we're running the program moving forward as well.
Thank you.
Madam President,
Yes.
recalling that Manager Miller invited me to, expects me to speak up. I do want to just flag and underscore the point that James is making. You will recall, Manager Miller, that there's a project over in the city of Richfield involving alum. And that experience is one of the points that's engendered the idea about performance monitoring and criteria. But that certainly is a matter of scale. And so the kind of criteria that James is describing, with a range, given the nature of the technology that's used, the scale of the district's investment. But it is certainly not uncommon for state grants for projects like this, that there's an expectation that there's performance monitoring and that funds are returned if the project doesn't perform. And that is the kind of language that we would certainly recommend for the district with larger scale projects. So this is just one initial project. It's certainly a smaller scale, and maybe the technology is more established, but it's that issue that we have in mind that we're raising in the context of these agreements.
Good, thank you for the explanation.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Any other questions about the term sheet before we go on to the larger question?
Manager Olson.
Manager Olson.
I have a technical question. I'll lower my hand for now until we
Okay,
have time for that.
we'll loop back to you then. Anything else on the term sheet? If not, we will move to the question of the resolution 21069 order agreement project. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution?
Sando adopts the resolution.
Thank you for your motion. Is there a second?
Miller seconds.
Thank you, Manager Miller. Manager Olson, did you want to ask your question at this point?
Yes, thank you. The on the table, the 20-year life cycle table costs. Media replacement, I understand that. I don't understand tilling of media. You know, it says 10 times it needs to be tilled. Can someone explain to me what's going on with that process? Are we like raking it? Are we turning it over with machinery? What does tilling mean?
Manager Olson, I think I'll probably give you a very high level response. So I might kick this over to Raina, who might be able to explain it a little bit more technically than I can.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So the intent with the tilling there, with these filters, you know, as storm events happen, water goes over top them, filters through, and they have a chance to dry out. As these filter medias age, sometimes they get clogged. So it is best practice to, mechanically till or rake them to rejuvenate that media so that it continues to function. And then also periodically, as you see in that cost estimate table, the media should be replaced as well, but less frequently than the tilling needs to occur.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Weiss. Any other questions about the ordering the project? Then we'll move to voting on adoption of the resolution. Manager Hejmati,
Aye.
thank you. Manager Miller,
Aye.
Manager Sando,
Aye.
Manager Olson,
Aye.
Manager Maxwell,
Aye.
and Manager White votes aye. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Moran.
Thank you, President White and Board of Managers.
We have another resolution, 21070. Mr. Steele is here to talk about purchasing hybrid meeting technology.
Thank you, President White. Just a quick screen check, voice check.
Good.
We can hear you.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you, managers. Tonight I am presenting on Resolution 21070 for purchasing, implementing hybrid meeting technology for the district office. Just to start out the presentation, I just want to kind of make sure we're all on the same page in terms of what a hybrid model, a hybrid work environment means, specifically in context of what technology can do to get us there, and then cover what the proposal for upgrading district meeting spaces looks like, and then of course wrap it up with the costs and the timeline. So really, to best explain a hybrid model, a hybrid work environment is to start telling the story of what the district has gone through and adapted to for the last 2 years. If you rewind back to January of 2020, it was business as usual. Staff was in the office. As on your screen, all those yellow rectangles are all our individual workspaces, our cubicles. Meetings were taking place in our conference rooms. Consultants, vendors, the public would come into the office for collaboration, coordination, communication. And of course, the board was conducting its business in the boardroom. So managers, staff, the public would attend in person. So really in those before times, most of the district's work took place in a very centralized location at, the district office. And then March of 2020 hit, COVID kind of took over, swept across the globe, and we rapidly adjusted to a remote work environment. All of our work moved from that centralized in-office location to be very dispersed, spread across everywhere, working from home. So all of our internal meetings with partners, vendors, consultants, even board and committee meetings, those were all happening virtually. And that was all possible because, each individual had hardware, iPads or laptops, and software. First it was WebEx, and then it was, as we're on Zoom now. And that's really what it takes to kind of adjust from that centralized in-office model to a dispersed remote model. But as the vaccines have rolled out this year and vaccination rates have increased, the district, at least at a staff level, has been shifting into a hybrid model, which really means that work is occurring simultaneously in both a centralized in-office setting and a dispersed remote setting. So we know the hardware and software works for when we're all in the office because we've been doing that forever. We know that what we have in terms of technology works when we're all dispersed and remote because we've got 18 months of a proof point there. But what we're seeing now is really the whole of trying to tie those two models together, which is really that hybrid model. So right now, as some of us are in office any given day, some of us are at home. it's really mirroring the remote model where we're all at our individual workstations and collaborating, from cubicle to someone at home, and we're all just a bunch of squares on the screen. So really what this presentation and the board consideration tonight is technology to bring us from kind of this remote in-office model into a proper hybrid model, which is going to take technology, specifically hardware, to upgrade and make our conference rooms, our workspaces, our meeting spaces at the office connect so we can all work together like it's one space. So the first step for filtering through all those options for that equipment to bring us up to hybrid and industry standard is to establish some evaluation criteria. We're looking for hardware that integrates with our existing meeting space technology wherever feasible. We need something that provides a seamless and easy to use experience for the users. And we need something that's going to quickly and effectively support and enhance the district's current work. And then, of course, how much is it going to cost? So we have a proposal from iSpace Environments. And one of the first distinctions in that proposal was the separation of the types of hybrid work or the hybrid meetings that the district would utilize. One is internal meetings and the other is public meetings. Obviously, those have very different requirements. For internal meetings, which are primarily staff-led, those requirements are pretty straightforward. Ability to quickly and seamlessly launch a meeting, be able to coordinate and communicate effectively with colleagues and partners, regardless of their location. But for public meetings, the requirements are much more rigid. We have public meeting laws that must be abided by. Since the board has viable options for, remote meetings, Zoom like this, or, our boardroom is great for in-person, and the staff needs for this hybrid flexible work environment is an immediate need. Our recommendation is to pursue upgrading some of our conference rooms for staff use, and then to revisit any boardroom upgrades if there are any changes to in the future to open meeting laws. So 3 conference rooms, our most heavily trafficked conference rooms, have been selected for these hybrid equipment upgrades, which is Big Island, Cattail, and Arrowhead. At a high level, the proposed equipment that we're bringing in is a camera, a webcam, a tabletop device for launching, managing the meeting, including speakers, microphones, and then all the behind the scenes things like cables, controls, switching. And that's all that equipment will integrate with our existing equipment, our displays already in the conference rooms, to make them hybrid. And really the end goal is that, someone working remotely joining a meeting with staff or colleagues would see something like this instead of a bunch of different squares. And then anybody in office participating in one of these hybrid meetings will see something like this. So it's really merging those two, that remote world, that in-office world together, and making it really a meeting space that, regardless of where you are, we're able to get work done. So the cost for upgrading these 3 conference rooms is a little under $19,500, which includes equipment, installation, some contingency for that installation, as well as covering training and cover 1 year of coverage for equipment and labor. And although back in 2020, when we were setting the budgets, we didn't have a crystal ball to see how COVID was going to kind of unfold. So this wasn't a project that we had budgeted for, but with our Microsoft 365 migration and implementation that we completed recently, that came in about $8,000 under budget. And the big switch that we made earlier this year of our IT managed service provider has been saving the district probably right around $10,000 for the year compared to our previous vendor. So although not planned for under budget, it can be covered under the current IT contract services budget. So for timeline, obviously, I know we've all heard that the supply chain is kind of a mess. So it really depends on the inventory of equipment. Right now, it looks like 3 weeks out before that can be shipped and arrive in office. But we're really aiming to have these projects completed at the district by the end of 2021. So with that, staff is recommending approval of Resolution 21070, authorizing the purchase of installation of hardware to support hybrid meetings in 3 conference rooms at a cost of $19,465.87.
Olson, move approval.
Maxwell second.
This doesn't seem to be a lot of doubt here. Any questions for Mr. Steele before we vote?
One quick question from Gene. Is there an ongoing maintenance cost? Ongoing maintenance cost, or is that a yearly thing? Or is that just you had their training and equipment was 1,000 something? Was it? Is there an ongoing price for that after 1 year?
Nope, there is no ongoing cost at all. So we're just paying a year to make sure all the equipment's working, all the labor is covered, and then the only ongoing cost would be expanding some of our Microsoft 365 licenses to accommodate that, but that's I think last I checked, it was $10 per month per room. So that's kind of the only ongoing thing. It's just kind of another user for Microsoft 365. Can you upgrade to different software at a reasonable rate then, or is that just this is it and there's no upgrades down the line? In terms of like updating firmware and everything like that, or if we want to switch away from.
No, just upwards. If Microsoft changes versions, is there an update cost to that?
Nope, it will take, with Microsoft 365, all the new versions kind of roll out automatically as part of the subscription. So the equipment is set up specifically to be, compatible with those updates. So it should keep rolling with any of those new versions.
And you would be in charge of make sure that versions are upgraded?
Yeah, it'll happen automatically, actually.
Okay, all right. A lot of times they just don't even tell you. It's just they upgrade and you find out a month later or something like that if you didn't upgrade. So, okay, thank you.
Manager Miller is next, President White.
Thank you. Manager Miller.
Well, now that you've taken care of the staff needs, what about the board? What proposal have you got that the board can safely meet in the boardroom again with staff being remote, whether it be shields or whatever? I'm anxious to hear about that.
Sure. So thank you, Manager Miller, managers. As part of the proposal process, we did have iSpace Environments quote us for putting in technology to make the boardroom hybrid. The technology in there is obviously a lot more complex. We got wireless microphones, already cameras, we have recording equipment. So integrating with all that drove the price up quite a bit. So that part of the proposal in terms of just the technology side was, I think it came in as $36,000 just for the boardroom, just for equipment, just to make the boardroom hybrid.
Well, it would have been nice if somebody would have given us the option to discuss that, but I presume it'll be for a later date.
Manager Miller, let's turn to Mr. Smith. Would you tell us the current status of meetings in terms of hybrid or remote or?
Yes, Madam President, you are currently meeting remotely as authorized by the law. There is, I don't foresee many government bodies, for example, the Hennepin County Board never stopped meeting remotely and continues to do so for the foreseeable future. There are resolutions that I know, Madam Chair, you're aware of for MAUD that propose further changes in the open meeting law so that a local body that wishes to continue to meet remotely is able to do so even without the pandemic as the reason. We'll have to see where that would go in the next legislative session.
And would a hybrid meeting be legally permissible at this point?
Yes, Madam President, we have the open meeting law doesn't in a straightforward way address that, but it does provide for scenarios where some members are present and some are participating remotely, so long as all are visible and audible. We are aware of at least one Metro Watershed district that has gone through a process to determine that some of their board members feel very comfortable meeting in person. Others have immune issues or family travel, children issues, so they're less comfortable in meeting in person. So the board has authorized a hybrid meeting where some members are physically present and some are remote. So there are examples like that that are in response to the situation we're in.
Thank you. Mr. Whisker and then Mr. Steele again.
Yeah, I just wanted to address Manager Miller's comment directly about, wanting to have all the facts on the table for discussion about what the board's options are to meet under different configurations that meet the various needs and desires of all the different board members. Dick, I did speak with President White and Alex leading up to this meeting because we had gotten the proposal to get costing for both staff and the board for hybrid meetings. And the original intent, I was thinking, let's bring everything forward for a discussion to understand, where does the board want to land on the issue of hybrid meetings. And as we had looked at the needs and priorities, as well as what it would take to get this done and what problems it would solve, where we landed was bringing the staff recommendation forward as an immediate need, and then revisiting on an as-need basis the options for the board. As we've just covered, the issues with hybrid meeting technology for the board is it's about $40,000 in equipment, which isn't insignificant, but we can cover. That doesn't cost the implementation. That doesn't include the implementation costs. And then we're not quite sure how we would actually operate that. We would need somebody to drive that system in the middle of a board meeting that wouldn't be me. So there's just an operation or a staffing solution that's required. When we step back and thought about it, to use the hybrid technology, anybody that's using it from a board perspective, my understanding is under open meeting law, you couldn't participate from your home. You would have to participate in a public setting and we would have to notice that. So Gene wants to use it and he's out in Palm Springs, he's got to find a library. If Bill's down in Florida, he has to find a coffee shop. And then we have to notice which coffee shop and library that people are in so that the board members could be in the boardroom and somewhere else remotely. And then we'd need to actually be able to drive that technology in the meeting with some sort of staff support. So there's some, kind of broader policy considerations beyond just the simple investment in technology. And what Sherry and I discussed is we do have the option of meeting in person if that's more desirable and we could socially distance and mask. And in the meantime, we are making, I think, quite effective use of the remote meeting technology to get through meetings, even if it's not as pleasant as meeting face to face. So I just wanted to kind of provide that background. It's not that we didn't think about it. That's how we arrived at where we are. And Sherry and I discussed, I think she's asked me offline, what's the trigger for figuring out what our next move is as a board under a pandemic, given our technology, open meeting law, and the risk as well as everybody's individual preferences. So maybe there's a need for the board to have a discussion about how you want to move forward, meeting as a group, that would then inform how we want to bring some of that technology back. But that's a little bit of backstory for you. We weren't completely ignorant on the issue, and I apologize if it came across that way. That's my fault.
Madam President,
Mr. Smith.
if I could just clarify one point, so long as we have pandemic conditions that justify meeting remotely, a hybrid example like I described would not require managers to be remotely participating from a public place. So we would just essentially have a meeting like tonight, where I believe Manager Miller is at the district office. And maybe you could envision a scenario where there would be 1, 2, or 3 other managers that would like to be in the meeting room together face to face, and then others that may wish to be remote. And you need the technology to make all that work.
And
But
then, thank you.
That's under a pandemic.
Right.
And I think James was talking about when it's a non-pandemic.
Yeah, like hopefully, if there isn't a pandemic, there'd be some limitations on how you'd use that hybrid technology unless there's a change in state law. And so we're just kind of playing it out in terms of like, is the investment worth it? And we're more than happy to have that conversation with the board. I just wanted to answer your question, Dick, and make it clear that it's not like we haven't thought about that.
Well, I don't know about the rest of the board, but I think that in person, even if it has to be some kind of a modified deal, is a much more productive for policymakers to come to the conclusions, not just receive the information and act on it, but discuss it and get indications from other board people how they feel, not just whether they're for it or against it. But after all, we are a board of managers, and it's not a ceremonial appointment. So just a meeting in Starbucks in the public library isn't really in the spirit of the law that we're acting under. But we'll be ready for the discussion when you're ready to bring it up, I guess.
And I'd welcome, following your lead, President White, if there are other thoughts from managers, happy to bring this back at the next meeting and have facilitate discussion on what the board's comfort level is. I think the way that I've been thinking about it is we have a remote option where we have this platform to stare at all the tiles on the screen, and it's less conducive to understanding the energy in the room, perhaps. We do have the ability to meet in person, and that's a judgment call, and that's a judgment call I can't make for the board. It's based on how everybody feels and the risk. Then there's this middle option, which I'm not sure what problems it solves, of spending $40,000 to $60,000 to retrofit the boardroom and still have people in random locations, but some smaller subset in the boardroom. So to me, and then we're not sure how we leverage that technology long-term without a law change if the pandemic ends. So I've been thinking about it more binary, whether the board's choices are keep meeting remotely or let's decide we're comfortable under a certain set of circumstances meeting in person. And that might be the wrong way to think about it, but I'd be happy to take feedback. And if we want to move along, we could certainly set up a more focused conversation for that at the next board meeting and make adjustments from there.
Managers, are you ready for us to schedule a discussion on this?
I think it has a lot to do with the law changes. If there's any law changes down the line, then it makes a lot of difference. Otherwise, we're really going to spend money for nothing. I mean, I don't know.
Well, I'm not proposing that we spend the $40,000, but it would be nice if we had known about that and be able to discuss that. But I'm comfortable voting for the staff proposal tonight, and we'll discuss the other stuff at another appropriate time.
Thank you. I think that somewhere in the materials, it does say that if we were to do the board meeting, it was 37,000 or something. I know I've seen that number.
It'd be a good discussion for policy meeting, policy committee meeting coming up.
Mm-hmm. And of course, we're watching the numbers, the case numbers. That's important too. Discussion next meeting or maybe after the first of the year. How are people feeling?
I'll just say staff's ready to have that conversation as soon as the board wants to have it. And we've really been, I've been following, Sherry and I are talking about the numbers, the technology, the costs, the board's preferences in the background every time we do monthly agenda setting. And so it's the board and President White's decision about how we want to meet based on safety and preference. So we're ready to have that conversation and can bring the information forward, but then at the next meeting, if that's something you want to do.
I don't think it's necessary to do it the next meeting. I think we've got plenty of other important agenda items, but I think we should be thinking about it.
Well, James and I meet the first Wednesday of the month, so we can talk this over and look at the schedule, upcoming meetings, and see where we want to plug it in for a discussion, perhaps in committee, and work something out.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, thank you. I've lost track of where we are. We've had the agenda, the
motion.
resolution has been moved, has it not?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else before we go to voting? All right, then voting on the resolution 21070, Manager Maxwell.
Aye.
Manager Olson.
Aye.
Manager Sando.
Aye.
Manager Miller.
Aye.
Manager Hijmati.
Aye.
And Manager White votes aye. Thank you, Mr. Steele. We have now a board discussion item. Ms. Christopher is going to be heading off talking about stakeholder engagement plan.
Okay, good evening, President White, managers. Forgive me while I adjust my windows here. Can you all see my screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. So yeah, this evening we want to have a discussion about the stakeholder engagement strategy for the responsive program and the permitting program alignment and get the board's feedback. So I will walk through what staff has identified as goals for this engagement effort, kind of an overview of the strategy, the audiences that we're looking to reach, and the methods for engaging each of those audiences, as well as an estimated schedule. And we'll be seeking the board input, particularly looking for input on any areas of risk or opportunities you see that staff may be missing. And if it seems to be tracking in the right direction, staff will then turn to kind of refinement of key messages and development of supporting outreach materials, and then come back in early December with a request for board authorization to initiate the process. And so just as a little bit of background context, from 2015 to 2017, the district led a robust stakeholder engagement process for the development of the 2017 Watershed Management Plan. And that was really focused on building awareness of the district's new balanced urban ecology strategy and really shifting kind of the reputation of the district from how we're often perceived as a regulatory agency to more of a partner that can really add value by being engaged in land use planning. And so that process involved a technical advisory committee, a policy advisory committee, as well as a number of other kind of targeted engagement events for other audiences. And I would say it was a quite a successful effort in terms of strengthening our relationships with some of these target audiences and also garnering broad support for the plan. And so since adoption of the plan in early 2018, the district has really been more internally focused as we've worked to align the organization around our new strategy and priorities, and with restructuring staff and realigning programs. And so really with this engagement effort, we're looking to essentially pick up where we left off with the plan, and really kind of follow through and report back to our communities on some of those, some of the commitments we made with the plan and how we're executing on those with our programming. And so two of the key initiatives that were identified through those discussions and that we've now made headway on are the development of the responsive program and the alignment of the permitting program. And so as the board knows, over the past few months, we've been discussing those quite a bit and have reviewed and refined the policy recommendations for both initiatives, and have gotten to a point where we're now ready to engage our external partners to vet and build support for those initiatives. And so the goals for this engagement effort are really twofold. In the near term, we want to, of course, ensure successful rollout of these two initiatives, which involves, building understanding of the proposed changes with clear and effective messaging. Also getting stakeholder input to help refine those changes, make sure that they meet our partners' needs. And then finally, build enthusiastic support for those changes that we're making, which we anticipate being fairly well received, and really capturing that support in writing and getting testimonials and being able to use that to continue to kind of build out our brand around this and get more partners coming to the table. And then longer term, we're also hoping to use this engagement effort to really strengthen relationships and improve integration with these partners. And so, as I said, the last few years, we've really been more internally focused. We've been less connected with these audiences, particularly with the pandemic. And so we really want to use this opportunity to re-engage our partners and work with them to kind of collaboratively develop our approach for moving forward and staying connected, whether that be through continuation of the Technical Advisory Committee or whatever other methods we can identify that are mutually beneficial. And so some of the sub goals I've got there that we've identified are, broadening awareness of the district strategy to partner with the land use community and the value that we can bring to the table, building and strengthening those relationships, maintaining that connection, and then having that then lead to increased coordination and collaboration with the district, and ultimately generating a higher volume and quality of projects as a result. And so through this process, we're really hoping to understand what are any of the challenges or barriers that our partners see to being able to coordinate and collaborate more effectively, as well as getting guidance on how we can improve that pipeline of projects, as well as any reciprocal actions that our partners may be willing to take to help strengthen that relationship. And so I first just wanted to cover kind of a few high-level points with regard to the approach for this engagement plan, and then we'll get into a little more of the detail on the next couple slides. And so really the main focus for this effort would be reestablishing the Technical Advisory Committee. And this would be similar to the one we had for the plan, where it's comprised of our primary contacts at the cities, the counties, the park board, Three Rivers. And we would expect it to be a lot of the same players that would probably be on this time around. Some faces have changed, people have come and gone, but I think it would be largely the same makeup. And again, the intent is for this to be likely a standing committee, assuming there's buy-in on that, rather than just being formed for these discrete initiatives. And so we really see it as that it could be an effective way to maintain that connection and situational awareness, and kind of roll into other topics of interest in a way that's more consistent and efficient than doing that on an individual basis. And that is, I just wanted to note too, that is pretty common, that most watershed districts do have a standing tax, so it's not something that will be kind of unfamiliar or viewed as too much of a burden. As far as policymakers, we're not proposing a policy advisory committee this time. Really kind of the reasoning for that is that the policy direction largely has been set through the plan with the input of the policymakers. And so this is really more following through on that direction and operationalizing it with some of the programming. And so we don't see as much of a need for kind of steering and shaping, and that it's really more kind of the role of the technical advisory committee to speak to kind of how well the program might work for them, how they might use it, what they'd like to see maybe modified. And so, the other consideration is that I think what we're proposing with both of these initiatives is all pretty positive, pretty non-controversial, so that doesn't seem to be a lot of risk in terms of not having that higher degree of engagement with that audience, but that's an area where we'd welcome any board feedback as well. And then third, in terms of the private development community, what we're thinking at this point is developing basically a work group or having kind of some targeted input sessions where we could reach out to developers and contractors that we maybe have a relationship with for some input sessions to vet the rule changes and also get guidance and insight into how we might engage our private partners more effectively, how we might structure kind of the private side of the responsive program in a way that is appealing and works for them, and really use that as a jumping off point to see how we might engage the broader private community. And then, as I mentioned, we're really looking to use these discussions to help inform kind of the long-term strategy for these different audiences. I wanted to just briefly pull this up. I don't think we need to, board doesn't need to review it in detail, but I just wanted to mention with the table that's in your packet that I'll be going to next, we did include for each audience the level of participation and the role for each audience. And this is based on a framework from the International Association for Public Participation, referred to as IAP2. And this is a pretty widely accepted framework that we've seen used by a few of our partners. And our new outreach program manager, Helen, has suggested that we try applying it for this engagement effort and others that are underway. And we've discussed that while the district has been pretty successful with its engagement in the past, it's been pretty organic. And so we think that drawing from some of these frameworks provides a more consistent approach, kind of some shared language, and just helps professionalize our engagement planning and kind of take it to the next level. So we've appreciated Helen's input on that. And as you can see with the table, the level of engagement increases from left to right. And for this effort, we're recommending that the TAC be kind of involved, so kind of that mid-level of kind of working with us throughout the process, making sure that their concerns and aspirations are understood and considered. And then most of the other audiences under this effort would be more in that consult category, where they're allowed to provide their feedback into the process, but not as heavily engaged. And so I wanted to just pull up this table that was in your packet, and it is a lot of info. So let me see if I can figure out how to get my laser pointer here. Oh, 1 second. Okay, I'll use this to kind of step through. So I'll go kind of across the top with the audiences and just kind of give kind of the highlights of what we've got in mind for each of the groups. And so the first few columns there are all the local public agencies, so your cities, counties, park boards, park district. And so as I mentioned, the primary staff contacts would be the ones we'd be looking to participate in the technical advisory committee. Also, as one of the first steps, we're proposing what we're calling a soft rollout, which is essentially just individual calls or meetings to these primary staff contacts to introduce the initiatives, the engagement plan, and gauge their interest in participating in the TAC, and then also offer any individual meetings with them or their policymakers that may be desired. And then moving over to other key staff and policymakers at our cities and counties, particularly for some of the larger cities, there might be multiple departments that we're interested in kind of tracking this and that we want to be engaging. And so we want to make sure that there are opportunities for them to be informed as well. And so what we're proposing there is that both the other staff and policymakers would be invited to kind of the kickoff event for the technical advisory committee. And planning at this point that would be a remote meeting, which would allow for a broader audience. And we would essentially use that kickoff to frame the purpose, the scope, kind of the process and how they can track it or be involved, and really just reinforcing the district's partnership message. And then beyond that, we'd be looking to keep these audiences informed through written communications, whether that's publications that go out at key milestones or email updates. And then, as I said, one-on-one meetings sort of as requested or needed, as well as essentially all of these audiences receiving kind of the formal public comment notice for the rules. So then moving over to the next column, we've got kind of regional state agencies, so Bowser, DNR, PCA, Met Council. We generally are assuming that there's would be kind of limited interest or less need for input from these audiences for these two initiatives. So while they were on the TAC for the plan, I think they wouldn't necessarily be critical members for these initiatives, but maybe ones that we want to fold in if we kind of transition into other topics like climate planning or other things down the road. And so for this effort, they'd be mainly receiving written communications as well as kind of formal comment on the rules. And then private developed community, as I mentioned, we'd be looking mainly to engage them through these targeted input sessions and have that kind of inform our ongoing engagement of that audience. And then finally, general public, there's no kind of direct engagement plan there. That would mainly just be opportunity for comment on the rules through the public notice that goes out during the formal review period. And so I want to just then briefly run through the schedule and how the board would be envisioned to plug into this process, and then we can open it up for discussion from there. So kind of our target schedule is over the next 2 months, starting to have kind of some of those individual conversations, kind of that soft rollout to gauge interest from our prospective TAC members. And then we'd be targeting kickoff of the TAC in February, with meetings then proceeding probably about monthly, probably looking at about 5 meetings there from roughly March to July. As I said, kind of written communications at key milestones, one-on-one meetings as needed. And then looking to have kind of those targeted private development community sessions kind of May to June. Formal comment period then would be, there's a 45-day comment period required, roughly June to July, and then adoption of both the rules and the responsive program around August. Is kind of what we're currently projecting. And in terms of board involvement, I think a few key points of engagement that we would envision would be, the TAC kickoff, of course, and then any one-on-one policymaker meetings that are requested, as well as kind of verbal and written updates provided to the board in meetings kind of throughout the process to keep you engaged in how that's going. Let me get rid of my pointer here. All right. So with that, I will kind of turn it over to the board for any feedback, and I have just kind of a few questions I've thrown up here in terms of, are there any concerns that you see with what's being proposed so far, any risks you see, other opportunities that we may be missing at this point in time?
Thank you. I'll open up for board question discussion.
Gene has a question. Then on the soft rollout, if a city or doesn't get involved right away, is there still room for them to get involved? Like 2 months all of a sudden at dawn, or they got some new person came in?
Yeah, good question. I think that would be certainly up to the board. I think what we did with the Watershed Management Plan Technical Advisory Committee was, it was essentially kind of an open call, inviting all of our cities to and counties to essentially appoint a representative. And what ended up happening was, most of, at least the larger cities did appoint someone. Many of them have a shared consultant that was on the TAC and represented multiple cities. And then there were a few of kind of the smaller cities or ones that have just small area within our jurisdiction that opted not to participate. And so we had a pretty good representation across the cities. And once that was initially set, the board did appoint the TAC kind of to formalize it. And I think there were a couple changes throughout the process, or maybe a couple of additions that we maybe just brought through as a consent item to kind of officially add them. So I think we'd certainly be open to that and encourage participation if there is a change in the city's desire.
Thanks.
Thank you, Becky.
Manager Hejmati next to President White.
Manager Hejmati.
Thank you. I had questions about the Technical Advisory Committee. I'm not familiar with them, so I may be asking the wrong question, Becky. So you may have to correct me and educate me on it as I ask the questions. Are there people who attend some, like there are certain projects on which we want certain kinds of expertise, and so do only segments of the Technical Advisory Committee come in for certain projects and not the entire ones? I mean, how does that work usually? Or does everybody have to be there for everything? I mean, can you explain that to me, please?
Yeah, Manager Hejmati, managers, that's a very good question and something we're still kind of discussing internally as well. I think typically what we see is there tends to be kind of the point person at each city that's sort of assigned to be kind of the watershed liaison, and that might vary in terms of who that is by each city. It might be an engineer, might be a water resources specialist, might be public works, but that tends to kind of stick with the same one or two people. And so I think they tend to be kind of the go-to for a lot of these different initiatives and be the ones who would volunteer. But I think there certainly are, as I mentioned, kind of other departments that we'd want to engage as well. And I think that is a question that we still have as we think about how to make this a standing committee. And if we were, one of the likely topics we'd want to transition to next would be climate action planning. And there may well be, different expertise we want to bring in. And so we are trying to think of how to be flexible with this, where we want to keep that core group engaged, but figure out how we can kind of plug in others or have, complementary committees or subcommittees or what that might look like. So I think we're still figuring some of that out.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So you're thinking about it. So it sounds to me like there's a certain fluidity there that, not everybody has to be there every time. It might depend on the project. And so which then leads me to the next question, which is, are we thinking of going beyond just the state and county agencies to places, to organizations like the Army Corps of Engineers or the University of Minnesota or USGS? They sometimes can, as a resource or as may have technical expertise.
Yeah, I think potentially, depending on the topic, we want to make sure we've got all the right people at the table. And that's where I guess it might be a challenge just of how much we can do with one group, because I think there is value in sort of having this consistent group that's sort of kind of our, like I said, kind of our core team of kind of liaisons for each of the cities, but then figuring out who else we need to bring in. And I know that's sort of an active conversation we're having with Brian and Kaylee and R&M, is kind of what they envision needing for the 2D model build as more of probably a technical, even more technical and like kind of model focused committee that would be sort of a complementary piece to this, and having that be probably two separate things that are covering slightly different topics and kind of focus areas within that project.
Okay, yeah, you kind of hit the nail on the head. That's what I was thinking about. I was thinking about R&M and the work that they're doing, where other people might get involved, other agencies might get involved besides just state agencies. So you're thinking about trying to figure out how to make that work too. Okay. Right. The third question I have is about the public. I noticed that there's that a lot of this is focused primarily on partners like cities and so on. And there's not, there's a limited amount about the public in here. And I'm presuming that that will increase, except for that, that one slide you showed about public participation and so on. You had that one slide. I'm presuming that Helen will start giving us input as to how to engage the public in this in a more personal way, because after all, they are the taxpayers who are paying for this stuff. Is that where you're going? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, I think kind of the more limited role that I'd kind of spoken to really pertains just to these two kind of specific initiatives, where with the responsive program, really kind of our target audiences of who we're looking to kind of bring projects to us are kind of our public agency partners and private development communities. So that's kind of who we're focusing on there. And then similarly with the rules, I think that's kind of been our typical kind of target audiences as well. And so I think as we, again, kind of roll into other topics like climate planning, there'll need to be more thought given to how we're engaging the general public, certainly on that topic. And that probably pertains to other things we might roll into as well. And yeah, hopefully, like I said, yeah, certainly Helen can help us kind of come up with our strategy for that.
Okay, all right. That's kind of what I thought would happen. So you already, thank you. It seems like you're already thinking about it, that Helen will be engaged in it. That's what I'm hearing. Is this correct?
Yeah, I would say so. And I don't know if
okay, thank you.
James has anything to add.
That's what I need to know. Okay.
Yeah, Arun,
right.
I just, do you have another question?
Yeah, go ahead, James. No, go ahead.
I was just going to maybe reinforce a few things that Becky had mentioned. One of the things that I want to make clear in terms of the technical advisory committee is that outside of the immediate engagement to seek feedback from the impacted stakeholders, our communities, on policies that we're developing, regulation that's going to be changed, and the responsive program, how do we partner on capital projects? The core purpose of the technical advisory committee at a strategic level for Minnehaha Creek Watershed District is to ensure that we maintain strong relationships with our member communities, to really make sure that with cities we remain visible, present, and our value proposition remains relevant. What we found over time is making those inroads and having strong relationships at that level with policymakers or with staff of those communities. It's sort of a trickle up relational strategy. When our communities are happy, county electeds are happy, state representatives are generally happy. That just serves us kind of big picture well. As we move into broader initiatives like climate action, or there are specific projects like the 2D model, the TAC would be involved, but there may be parallel engagement strategies to bring in other affected stakeholders, whether they're land use planners, hazard mitigation planners at a regional or federal level with FEMA or Army Corps, or the affected general public. And so I just wanted to, reinforce, I think, what Becky had said, and just restate the utility to us long-term of periodically reaching out and connecting with our communities. And that's really at the heart of what we're trying to restart.
Thank you, Mr. Whisker. Any other input here from the board? I don't need an answer to this. I guess I'm just thinking to myself about how permitting and responsive program aren't exactly the same, but it's good to have the same process, same TAC. But I'm just, I'll be curious to see how you juggle or blend those things as you go forward. That's all.
Yeah,
Anything
Manager
else?
White. Yeah, I think that's a good comment, and I think they are different, but I think there's a lot of parallels in terms of kind of the core purpose of kind of enhancing that connection with land use community, using kind of both programs to really pipeline in opportunities for partnership. And so we're trying to, I think that'll be kind of the main focus and theme for this engagement effort is really how do we do that more effectively? And then they'll get into some of more of the specifics of rule changes and some of those things, but that's sort of the central theme that is really true to both of those initiatives.
Got it. Thank you. Is there anything else, managers, that you'd like to add to this before we let Ms. Christopher go? All right, then thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will look forward to other iterations of this, future iterations.
Thanks.
Mr. Whisker, what is your report this evening?
Yep, thank you, President White. First, just provide an update on the drought conditions within the watershed. We remain in moderate drought here in Hennepin County and Carver County. The Twin Cities has received 22¼ inches of precipitation this year, which is just about 6 inches below normal. The next 2-week forecast looks pretty dry with warmer than average temperatures here in late October. Current lake elevation for Minnetonka is 928.14, which is 5.5 inches below the runout elevation of 928.6, so approaching half a foot. So it's quite low. Dam's going to remain closed unless the watershed receives enough precipitation to increase the lake level above 928.6. That's extremely unlikely at this stage in the year. So the dam's been closed since July and likely remain closed until ice in. And down at Hiawatha, Minnehaha Creek's running around 6 cubic feet per second, so a small trickle. A couple of other notes. I did want to mention it's that time of the year, so Hennepin County has initiated the annual appointment process for our Board of Managers. Manager Hejmadi and Manager Maxwell have both received direct emails from Hennepin County that I've been copied on, so I just want to confirm that they received those notices by way of mention here tonight. Manager Maxwell, Manager Hejmadi's terms expire March 8th, but Hennepin County's process opens the application back to the board between November 12th and then finishes December 31st. And then the county moves forward with their deliberation and appointment process after that. I also wanted to note that in the very near future, myself, President White, Tiffany Schaffler will begin engaging policymakers at the county, city, park board, state representative level ahead of dissemination of final findings and recommendations for the Nokomis white paper. You'll all receive a written update on that in the near future ahead of us beginning that work. But along the lines of the next 60 days, there'll be a significant engagement effort and points of connection. And we'll be using that like we always do to position the district favorably, as well as just deliver the specific information relative to the Nokomis white paper. And then finally, as we discussed this evening, after I have a conversation with President White, we will be in front of the board to discuss options for board meeting format that keep everybody safe, but also meet the needs and desires of the managers to run informative, dynamic, decision-oriented meetings. And that is what I have for you by way of report tonight. And as always, happy to answer any questions or take on any additional topics. Oh, there's one more thing before I forget. I'm sorry, it almost slipped my mind. Staff did meet this week with 4 residents and of West 54th Street, just south of West 54th Street on Minnehaha Creek in the city of Edina, with the Director of Engineering. And that meeting went quite well. Both the district and the city outlined that stabilizing single-family home private stream bank isn't a service that's usually offered, but given that the project, the partnership, the momentum, the district had seen fit to do the engineering study. The city was willing to advance that project through design under their own steam, but they'd be looking for residents to evaluate and provide a proportional share of the capital costs. At least on first meeting, the residents took that information quite well, and we'll have more information for you after they take some time to digest that, review the technical report, and we can put the pieces together. So favorable meeting. The residents understand the capital costs. They understand that they'd be asked to bear those, that the city would cover design, and that the district has already covered some of the feasibility work. And maybe there's an option for modest contribution from us in terms of construction administration or something like that, partnering with the city. So we're going to see what feedback we get from those residents in the coming weeks, and then that should be back in front of you for some level of consideration after staff has some more information. Sorry for jumping back into the admin report there.
Thank you. Any questions for James? All right then. Well, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Have a great night. Happy Halloween.
Thanks, James.
Happy Halloween.